Good afternoon. I am Mike Duffy, president of the Cape Cod Tufts Club, and on behalf of the club, I want to welcome 120 participants to today's timely presentation on the OCS diet. That truly is a remarkable number, 120. In addition to members of the Tufts community, we have alumni from 27 additional schools around the country, including members of the Intercollegiate Alumni Clubs of Cape Cod, representing local schools such as MIT and Harvard. A few housekeeping items before we start the program. This meeting will be recorded and uploaded to our Tufts Alumni YouTube channel. You will notice your audio and video are disabled. Once we begin, you will see the presenter on your screen. You'll be able to hear her, but she will not be able to hear or see you. You may need to adjust your volume. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, you can do so by clicking the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. This will open a window where you can type your questions. After the presentation, Amanda will read the questions for our speaker to answer. Now I'm going to pass the video off to Linda Gudis, a member of our board, who will introduce today's speaker. Linda?
Thank you, Mike. Dr. Jeanne Goldberg is a professor of Nutrition Emerita at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy at Tufts University. She remains an active member of the faculty as a research professor and a teacher. In addition, she has hosted 3 Tufts Travel and Learn alumni trips, is an avid gardener, and enjoys being with her 2 beloved grandsons. Dr. Goldberg is a triple jumbo. She received her master's and PhD degrees from Tufts and is a Jackson parent. I recently asked Dr. Goldberg, what is the OCS diet? She mysteriously preferred to keep me wondering. And so I am honored to present Jeanne Goldberg and the OCS diet, the promise of good nutrition.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. And thank you all for being here. I really just wish I were down there with you because I love Cape Cod. So let me introduce the subject of what I want to talk about by putting it into my sort of Tufts context. And that is, well, it starts way back when, after I graduated from college, I actually got my master's degree at Tufts. At that time, there was an MA associated with the dietetic internship at New England Medical Center. So I go back a long way. But in the late mid-70s, I got a phone call from somebody whose name is familiar to all of you. Jean Mayer, you've heard of him. He called me and told me he was starting a newspaper column and that he needed someone to, as he said, write the questions and answers to his column. That was, it was kind of mind-blowing to me because I didn't think I wrote very well and I was scared out of my mind when he said to me, and if you'd like to give it a try, you better do it right the first time because I'm a very busy man and I can't be bothered correcting your work. So I like to say that I got a C+ because when I went to visit him and to get the results of my work, he told me he could use 3/4 of it and I was hired. That began my life as a ghost, the ghost of Jean Mayer. And by that, I mean that for a number of years, and many of you are thinking, none of us women would probably like to be a ghost for that long these days. But at that time, that's what I did. And I wrote the questions and answers to Dr. Jean Mayer's Food for Thought nutrition column that grew to be in 160 newspapers around the country and really dealt with issues of trying to get nutrition straight. to help get people to understand that really it isn't so complicated, but really there's a lot of noise in the system. Dr. Mayer, in fact, who really didn't mince words, he called Americans a nation of nutrition illiterates. He didn't mince words. Anyway, that began my career in trying to talk about sound nutrition and how to achieve it without misleading people. And sadly to say, I think if I had another however many years, there's still plenty left for me to do, because it's really a tough sled to persuade people about what they ought to eat and probably what's not such a good idea for most of the time. That said, I keep slugging at it. Anyway, so what I want to talk to you about today is the OCS, or Ordinary Common Sense Diet. And if I can, I want to get to the PowerPoint. Here we go. There we go. Okay. There we are, the OCS diet. And if you look at this screen, what it hints at is that probably it's a juice diet, or it's a green diet, or it's I don't know, it's a celery and apple diet. But no, that's none of it. It's just that when I type the words the OCS diet into the PowerPoint program, this is the background it furnished, and I thought it was actually kind of attractive.
Professor
So
Goldberg,
I left it here.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it doesn't look like your screen is shared quite yet.
Huh. Oh,
So if you scroll to the bottom and you hit screen share.
Oh, yes. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's not. It's, wait a sec. Oh, I told you I was going to be, oh dear. Wait a minute. Okay.
So see if you scroll.
Sorry, folks.
So if you go back to the Zoom screen, the Zoom program.
Got it. There you are. Okay, got it. Okay.
Thank you. Yep.
Sorry. See, I told you I was technologically challenged, and I delivered on my promise. Okay. So now we got it straight. Okay. So but I need to go back. So what is the OCS diet? There are just 3 simple things. It includes foods that provide the essential nutrients your body needs in adequate amounts. And actually, if that sounds a little familiar, or he got there after me, so I can claim first dibs here. Michael Pollan said it quite well when he said, eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. And that's really what it's about. It, along with regular exercise, allows you to maintain a reasonable weight. It focuses on foods that you enjoy eating. And that's it. That's all you need to know. The rest you probably already do know. But what the OCS diet stands for, you have to wait until the end. Okay. But ordinary common sense, eating the right foods in the right amounts, has lots of competition, because nutrition has lots of competition, or sound nutrition has lots of competition. When Jeanne and I started writing for the popular press, we really didn't have a lot of competition. Vogue magazine would have a lot of fad diets, and we'd have our occasional article on sound nutrition or sensible dieting, but really it was not very much else. Nowadays, nutrition has become hot stuff. And there are things like the full plate diet. Those of you who are as old as I am remember probably the 3 martini diet and Dr. Herman Toller's diet. He was the one whose girlfriend killed him, or the Scarsdale diet. and his wife killed him. The fast diet, Dr. Siegel's cookie diet. These are just some of the crazy diets that you could go into the bookstore and get right now. The ultimate tea diet, because there are nutrients in tea or compounds in tea that really are probably good for you if you like drinking tea. The 3-hour diet, I'm not sure what exactly that is, but it's out there if you'd like it. The Pray Fit diet, to put a little religion in your dieting. The fully raw diet, and this healthy looking young woman is suggesting that you eat everything raw, which really gives your GI tract quite a workout. The 4 blood type diet, and you eat according to your blood type. And the paleo diet, which suggests you go back to your forefathers and eat sticks and twigs and raw meat. And if you want to do it vegetarian, there is the paleo vegetarian diet. Pretty silly. It's kind of an oxymoron, in fact. The keto diet. Now, I'm going to stop a minute on the keto diet because, like the rest of these, this has all been around the barn and back again multiple times. The keto diet actually started in 1869 when there was a famous patient named Banting, and his doctor told him he really had better lose weight because he was so fat that he had to go down the stairs backwards. Anyway, what the keto diet did and why it is that, and it takes carbohydrate out of the diet almost completely. What that does is it forces the body into an abnormal metabolic state in which you start burning some fats in order to get the carbohydrates that your body needs. So what happens, as I believe that this is one of Dr. Mayer's favorite things, you spend a lot of time on the toilet in the early days because carbohydrates hold water, and in giving up the little bit of carbohydrates that are in your liver, you lose water with them. But that has been popular in over and over again and over the decades because it leads to an immediate effect of weight loss. It also leads to an artificial metabolic state, which isn't, in the short term, it doesn't do any harm, but in the long term, it's not a terribly good idea. Oh, and there we are. I don't know if you can see this or not, but it doesn't much matter. And here are a whole bunch more diets. This is what you see if you go into the bookstore now, which is why I've not been in a hurry to write a nutrition book, because to find common sense in here is really quite a problem. I see up there the South Beach diet, which again, I think the thing that the South Beach diet did was bring cauliflower onto center stage. So how did nutrition become such a hot topic? When I was in college, people would say you're majoring in nutrition or in dietetics at that time. Why would you do that? But I was there essentially at the right time, because in the 60s, the role of nutrition as part of preventive health emerged loudly or began to emerge into something that became really important. People began to really pay attention to the fact that what you eat makes a difference in who you are. It was also true that the research in nutrition was much bigger than just knowing about vitamins and minerals. The discovery of vitamins and minerals began in the 30s, and it really happened, or vitamins in particular, happened rather quickly over just 2 decades. But then we began to understand, those things in foods other than vitamins and minerals really had something to do with who we were and how healthy we were. And so funny words like anthocyanins and beta carotene and more recently, hydroxyquinone, all these words made their way into the popular literature because, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Another thing that happened is that various sectors began to realize that there's money in nutrition. You can make a lot of money selling vitamins and minerals and selling books and putting information on food labels and creating products and all kinds of ways that, and that there is gold in nutrition, increased its visibility in the public arena. And also, more and more people were willing to talk about nutrition. And I'll talk about that in just a minute. So in the old days, in what I consider the sort of good old days, this is the way nutrition information flowed. It went from scientific research, and let me tell you, it was really hard to get to scientists to talk to the public about, or even to talk to reporters about good nutrition. They were doing their science in their labs, and they just really didn't, that was where it should stay. They published it in peer-reviewed publications. The peer-reviewed publications let out press releases. Those press releases were what got to the media, who picked up the stories and told the story to the public. That is a clear, easy chain of communications. And I call it the good, bad old days, but that's how it was. This is how it looks now. And it's very different. As you can see, everybody's talking to the consumer, and the consumers are talking to each other. So what I mean by that is that with the advent of the internet, things have gotten very, very different. Everyone has recognized that it's good to keep the nutrition story out there because, as I said, there's gold in it. Finally, the rise of the internet has changed the communication environment dramatically so that it's impossible to log onto your screen and not get some kind of nutrition information the minute you get into your server. And the problem is that anybody who wants to can talk about nutrition, because one of the things that's still true today, even though some of us have are licensed as nutritionists or dietitians because it's mandatory in some states, the fact is, to this very day, there are people who call themselves nutritionists and offer credentials and programs, and they have no more credential to do that than your mailman. And as I said, that information is absolutely everywhere. So if you turn on your computer, you might see something like this. This is a press release that is telling you to eat chocolate once a week. Now, what's so hot about chocolate? Well, it does contain some compounds which may have a little, some benefit in lowering heart disease risk. But look at the way it's written. Guilty pleasure, more like a superfood. Well, let me stop right here and tell you there are no superfoods, no single foods, no one food that really stands out as giving you the nutritional home run. And if you read to the first sentence here, calls it a superfood, the last sentence says it's associated with an 8% lower risk of blocked arteries as compared with people who didn't eat chocolate. If you read the article, however, it says a lot of things, that this was an observational study, that it's only an association between people who eat more chocolate and their heart health. The authors don't know whether there were other things that people were doing that contributed to their heart health, that it wasn't the chocolates at all. And besides all of that, it may be people who eat chocolate may eat fruits and vegetables, more fruits and vegetables as well. My take on this is chocolate tastes good. If you enjoy it, a piece of chocolate occasionally is okay. I would in fact go as far as to take issue with the advice in the current health and nutrition letter, which you all just got, which says, if you've done all these things and it goes through all of this, if you want a square of chocolate once a week, it's okay. Come on. I don't eat a square of chocolate once a week. When I eat chocolate, I might eat a piece of chocolate or I might eat two. That to me is what I regard as reasonable nutrition, but you don't eat the whole box. The spurious claim for superfoods has been taken. I think this is an extreme example. Cheat death with pomegranate juice. That lady she's quite an unusual woman, I'll say, but she has made a bloody fortune on pomegranate juice, which in fact is, I find, straight up rather difficult. It needs to drink, but here is a case where she has used some nutrition observations from science to extrapolate to the fact that you really ought to drink pomegranate juice. So one of our big problems is that as a result of all of these things about pomegranate juice and chocolate and you name it, combined with the fact, and this is probably one of the biggest problems with the public understanding nutrition, that the public believes that nutritionists are always changing their mind. I get very defensive on that point because I don't like taking the bullet for this one. The problem is, and it goes back to the slide that I showed you a little bit before with that neat channel of behaviors where the information flowed from the laboratory down through the chain to consumers. That is, nutrition science is evolutionary. It's not revolutionary. If you read about a breakthrough in nutrition, the answer is it's not true. Nutrition science it isn't a science of breakthroughs. It's a science that's evolutionary, not revolutionary. And unfortunately, as all of these organizations and individuals have found it profitable to get their story out to the public, a lot of half-baked nutrition science or nutrition, what we believe to be true, made it into the public arena long before it was ready. And so if you look at these slides on the left, it says here, does eating soy milk increase breast cancer risk? Well, new study says maybe not. But another study says soy is tied to life after breast cancer. And another study says that it has no effect. What this is the evolution of the science being brought into the public domain. The example on the right, the article on the right, it has a plate of 3 eggs, which I would say is probably more than anybody needs to eat at one time. The fact is that early evidence suggested that the cholesterol in egg yolks was not good for heart health, that it raised serum cholesterol. Later, it was found that it wasn't the cholesterol in egg yolks so much as it was saturated fat that affected heart health. But it was easy for the public to glom on to the notion that eggs were bad for you. They didn't like them. It's easy for many people to give up an egg. So it was an easy thing to do. Now they hear that eggs are back on the diet list. Again, it was the evolution of science that has put eggs back into their proper position, but it's taken forever to get that information straightened out. And I don't think it really has to this day. Okay. So the sum total of this is there's a lot of conflicting information about what foods I should eat and what ones I should avoid. And it has managed to destroy public confidence in nutrition. Forgotten in all of this story is the information that's told in this chain link fence here, an unfortunate analogy on my part, but if you look at this pretty closely, the first thing, and if you were in the room, I'd ask you to point it out to me, but you're not. The driver of food choice over time, and this has remained at 90%, the most important thing that drives what people eat is taste. And you can't move that out of that position. People eat food because it tastes good to them, or they get used to the taste. And I would argue that there's a subset of people that I call the worried well, who will eat it in spite of how it tastes, because they do everything in every way to live as healthfully as possible. Well, if you like it that way, I don't happen to. I will never get used to everything whole grain. And notice that price comes second, and that, of course, is socioeconomics. And the third driver of nutrition behavior is healthfulness, bumping up against convenience. So it's way down the list in terms of on what basis people choose their health as a factor driving their food choices, which has made it very hard to change behavior, despite all of the facts and factoids that have been thrown at us. Another thing that has made it complicated for consumers is that the food industry gets an A+ in revolving to nutrition science. They have responded like no one else, because new products drive new business. This is an example of the dairy aisle. And if you go to the supermarket these days, I know some of you are buying online, but if you go to the supermarket, you might find it hard to find milk, what I call milk, because everything else is there along with it. Almond milk, which never mind that it isn't nutritionally comparable to regular milk. It's environmentally a disaster, because growing almonds is environmentally complex thing to do, takes more water. But there's soy milk, there is all kinds, and now oat milk. Never mind whether people like it, but some bit of science has led to the production of these products, and the number of products continues to grow. My daughter lived in Israel, in Jerusalem, for a few years ago, and came back and said it was actually a relief to live in a country where there weren't as many choices. There was plenty of fresh food, but in the aisles of the supermarket, it was easier to get through the market that way than to find the milk among all of these products. And so here is the poor consumer going through the market, reading the labels, and what happens? She just gives up in desperation, because there is so much messaging that people can't really stop to figure out which one they really want. Is it low fat? Is it low salt? Is it low sodium? Is it low or high or whatever in anything? So finally, we come to how do I get through all this clutter? With the ordinary common sense diet. And that is me down in the corner, who someday might write the ordinary common sense diet book, but probably not. And all it is eating the right foods, and you know what they are: fruits and vegetables and whole grains, if you in a variety, smaller amounts of animal protein, and some dairy, low fat if you prefer it. And in fact, that's probably a good idea. So that is what I have to tell you, except that I just wanted to show you, if I go back to my to the whole screen here. Let's see. Okay, how can I get back to myself?
So if you go to at the bottom of the screen,
Here we
there we go.
There we go. Okay. So I think yesterday I got my weekly New Yorker, and I wanted to share this with you. I would have put it in the slide somehow if I'd gotten it day before yesterday. And I asked Mike Duffy if he recognized it. And he said, "Oh yeah, that's the food plate." It's not. It's interesting that this, in fact, is a production of the news literacy projects of the Scripps Foundation. And the food and the My Pyramid Plate, which came out during the first Obama administration, looked like this. But this one is the green section is verified facts. The yellow section is credible sources. And the orangey section is relevant context. This is all about communication of bigger issues than even nutrition. This is about getting the news straight. I found a lot of irony in what I was planning to talk about this week in terms of the importance of accurate communication and truth in telling the story like it is, saying it, admitting when you're wrong or you're off course, such as the fact that butter may not be all that bad. It's fine to have it on your bread if that's what you like the taste of, and oils at unsaturated oils at other time. But to be open enough to be able to tell the truth. And I just sort of want to end with a quote from one of my current heroes, Tony Fauci, who last night I heard him on television, and his comment was, "Let science speak." And so what I want to end with is that as you read new stuff about nutrition, and it will be out there and there will be new breakthroughs, just remember it's got to be in the context, and the information may change, and there's never a breakthrough, and you just have to wait until the whole story evolves. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that fascinating presentation, Professor Goldberg. So we are going to move into the audience Q&A session, and there's already lots of people submitting their questions. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. First one is, how about fasting as part of a sensible weight loss diet?
I knew that would come up. You know what? The data, and you got to be data driven. The data suggests that it won't do any harm. You probably won't lose weight any faster. And that's sort of the bottom line about fad diets. They often show that people lose a lot of weight fast. And part of that is that you're restricting what you're doing, and that makes it easier to control your behavior. And fasting is I have a friend who has followed that and swears that, you know, it works. My answer to her, and I know she doesn't like this, but anyway, my answer is see me in a year. Because my perspective on this is it's not the weight you lose in 6 months, it's the weight you've lost in 6 years. Dr. Meyer, I sort of harking back to Dr. Meyer because this is an area that he and I love to talk about. He called it the rhythm method of girth control.
All right. How do you view the benefits versus manufacturers' profits of taking regular supplementary vitamins?
Okay, so I'll start with I don't take them. The only one I take is vitamin D because I think there's enough evidence that in the winter in the north, we don't get enough of the active form of vitamin D. Other than that, if you eat right, what I said at a long time ago at a board meeting of that I was at, what you're doing is enriching your urine because the water soluble vitamins go out in your urine, the others get metabolized and excreted. It's a waste of money.
As an undergraduate at Tufts, I took a nutrition class during the 1980-1981 academic year that was co-taught by 3 faculty members, a woman and 2 men. Here we go. I'm almost certain. Huh?
That was early in the game, yes.
I'm almost certain that you were the female faculty member. As I recall, it was a very innovative course with each class dedicated to a different topic in nutrition, with the numerous guest speakers who were experts in their respective fields. I can't remember that Jeanne Meyer was one of those guest speakers. Can you confirm whether memory serves me correctly and perhaps talk about the early days of the Friedman School, which, as I recall, coincided with the time period in which I took this course?
Wow, great, good for you. Sure, how long do you want me to talk about that? I actually, the two men were Bob McGandy and Stanley Gershoff. Stanley Gershoff became the first dean of the School of Nutrition. Bob McGandy and I co-taught the course, though he did the heavy lifting. He was very funny and very dry and a wonderful man. I'm sadly, and Stanley, by the way, had a house on Cape Cod. The course was reborn when Jeanne became president of Tufts, because Jeanne called me. I was living in Connecticut at the time and commuted to teach. He said, I cannot be president of a university in which there is not a nutrition course. And that fortunately there is one on the books. And so because to get a new course up and running is a real procedure, but if there's one existing, you can offer it. And that's how the Nutrition 101 began. And there were 3 of us teaching it. Jeanne only taught 1 year, and I'll tell a tale out of school. It was a bit of disaster. He forgot his notes. And so he winged it. And he really was a little bit out of the rhythm. But that was the course. That's how it began. And in fact, I would argue that Jeanne did 2 great things at Tufts. He certainly, I think he was wonderful for the university. And he did 2 specific things. One Saul probably talked about a few weeks ago, which was that he he was successful in getting the Center on Aging, the USDA Center on Aging in downtown Boston. And that's the first nutrition research that really the first nutrition research came out of that center. The School of Nutrition, in fact, had its origin because Jeanne was a nutritionist and, you know, really a great nutritionist. Great because he took nutrition, he loved to eat, and he took nutrition into the real world. So he understood the science and how people behave. And quite frankly, what happened was it was impossible to put nutrition into arts and sciences because arts and sciences just didn't see that there was a place for nutrition there. And so the School of Nutrition, and it was called the School of Nutrition, was born out of necessity. And in fact, I was a student in the second class because I started teaching before I had my PhD, and I started in the School of Nutrition as a student, and I was also teaching and writing the column. As soon as the school opened, and it was in a little house on, Talbot Ave, I think, in a little brown house, one classroom. And that's where it all began. And as Jeanne liked to say, it's, the world's greatest school of nutrition. Well, it was, because there's only one to this day School of Nutrition, only it's had 3 name changes. It went from the School of Nutrition to the School of Nutrition Science and Policy. And now when it got a naming gift, it's the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy. Maybe more than you wanted to know, but that's how it happened. And then they took a vote of, do you want to have a building in Medford or do you want to have a building downtown? And the faculty said, we want to stay in Medford. And we went downtown.
That's awesome. All right, so we've got lots of more questions coming through. 1, 2, 3. We've got 7 more, and we want to be respectful of your time as well. So let's keep moving along. Hold on. Where can I find more information about soy and breast cancer?
I would go into the index of the Health and Nutrition Letter and find out how they've covered it. That's a good place to begin. And by the way, I didn't mention it before, but you all got a notice which told you that you could get the Health and Nutrition Letter for January, which I thought was really relevant to what I was trying to talk about today. And if you're so inspired it'll tell you how to subscribe to the Health and Nutrition Letter, which you should know does benefit the students at the Friedman School. I think, to give the competition a nod, the Harvard Health Letter is a reliable source. What you want is to start with layman's reliable sources. And there again, it's a story that has evolved and remains in understudy.
For those of us who tend toward a vegetarian diet, what are your views on bioavailability of plant protein and how to help with absorption?
One word, variety. If you eat a lettuce diet, you're likely to get in trouble. If you eat an all bean diet, you're likely to get in trouble. The more foods the bigger variety of foods that you include in your diet, whether it's vegetarian or not, the more healthful it is. The one caveat is that if you are if you're a vegan, then you have some questions about the absorbability of vitamin B12. And that's one of the few exceptions where a supplement is probably a good idea.
Is there any source that you consider having relevant and truthful nutrition information? I think you might have touched on this a little bit earlier. Can you
yeah, I did. I mean, I think I've said, I really think the Health and Nutrition Letter is an excellent source. I don't think I think if you've got a year's back issues, you've got the whole story.
Could you please explain the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian?
How long you got? Okay.
15 more minutes.
I'll keep it short. A dietitian a registered dietitian, because that is the coin of the realm. A registered dietitian is someone who has completed 4 years of undergraduate preparation and done a dietetic internship, or someone who has done a program which they've done over 5 years, in which the whole process of the academic part and the coursework and the applied part are combined. Then they take an exam, and that is how they become a registered dietitian. Nutritionist is a much more problematic definition. So under some circumstances, I would call myself a registered dietitian because I am, and that's where I started life. A registered dietitian nutritionist because I have a PhD in nutrition from an accredited university. Unfortunately, nutritionist is the word that people can play fast and loose with. So if you're talking about, for example, seeing a nutritionist, you really want to be sure that you've checked their credentials to know that they either have a PhD, and not only a PhD, but a PhD in nutrition from an accredited university in the topic, or that they also have an RD. That is the area in which you're likely to still find lots of quackery, to use an ugly common word, but it describes it.
Thank you. Some of the newer advice is to consume full fat dairy because we have found that sugar is the enemy, not fat. Your thoughts?
Oh, that goes to good foods, bad foods. Sugar is carbohydrate. Sugar itself is probably not one of the world's, it's a food that you have sparingly. You might consume your sugar as sprinkled on fruit. You might put it in your coffee. It's not poison. It's not also at the top of the hit parade. What was the other side of that? Fat? Is fat better?
Is because we have found, all right, some of the new advice is to consume full fat dairy.
Okay, that depends who you ask. And actually going back to talking to women in particular, most women really don't want to consume the fat, the calories from the fat that's in whole milk. And I think that there is a case where technology has made the milk that we drink, the lower fat milk that we drink, much more palatable than when I was a student and the skim milk tasted like chalk. And the way they do it is really very simple. They just put more milk solids. They put more skim milk powder in, so it has a better, what we call a better mouthfeel. I think that I'm not about to advocate for full fat dairy. I think that low fat dairy is, in general, the better choice, unless you want to eat butter. If you want a spread on your bread, to me, there's nothing like the taste of butter. You just don't use too much of it.
Do you integrate your definition of moderation into our preferred eating habits, or can you integrate your definition of moderation into our preferred eating habits?
I don't quite understand. Moderation is what it's about. I mean, for me, there are only 2 kinds of bags of potato chips, because I love potato chips.
Me too.
The ones that are full and the ones that are empty. So moderation means I buy a small bag of potato chips when I'm going to have them with something that really screams for potato chips, but I don't keep them in the house as a regular thing because it's about controlling behavior. I think moderation is is different for different people. And, if I were on Cape Cod right now, instead of talking to you on a screen, you can bet I would be having fried clams after I finish with this. That's moderation. Once a year, twice a year when I go to Cape Cod, it's a favorite food. Yes, I think moderation is absolutely what it ought to be about. Let me give you another example of that. People always say there are always articles about eating, how to make a lean Christmas meal or a lean Thanksgiving. I think that's ridiculous. I think if you what you need to do is not make so much food for Christmas or Thanksgiving that you're eating it for the whole next week. You make enough for that meal and you make it like you remember how it tastes good. You don't try to make the skinny version because it tastes like the skinny version. And remember, I said a few slides ago that taste is what it's about.
What do you do when you go out to eat? I have followed a diet since I was 12 and obese, 5'3" at 164 pounds. I am now 73 and I managed to never go beyond 146 pounds, though I have also been down to 108 pounds. I exercise, run, yoga, ski, and presently weigh 125. I have problems with people telling me what I should eat, and I have problems with people telling me what I should eat when one goes out.
Ugh, I would tell them that you're a walking success story. You don't need their advice. However you want to tell them that, really, I mean, that to me sounds like chutzpah. You know, when you go out, it's a special, unless you eat out all the time. If you eat out all the time, that's one thing. But if you eat out as a special occasion, you eat what you like. If it's mountains of food, you might want to ask for a doggy bag before you even start eating to control the proportions. But what you eat on an occasional meal out has nothing to do with weight control.
Mm-hmm.
It's moderation.
What is your assessment of the China study?
The China study, I don't know which China study you're talking about. Sorry.
We can move on.
Okay.
How does the nutrition advice for seniors differ, if at all?
For most seniors, the major difference, maybe a little more protein than the recommendations for the general population. Having said that, it means that what I'm saying is that the general American diet contains a lot more protein than anybody needs. I mean, there's a margin of safety. That probably covers older people. The problem for many older people is that they decrease their physical activity. And so in order to maintain their weight, they need to reduce their caloric intake. I think probably the first line of focus, in my book anyway, is to try as hard as possible to include regular physical activity, both aerobic and non-aerobic. By that I mean moving as well as having some workouts, because one of the problems, the physiologic problems with gaining weight as people get older is that they lose muscle. And if you lose muscle, muscle burns calories more effectively than fat. And so if you weigh the same and you have more fat, burns fewer calories, and you tend to gain weight. So basically, most people as they get older have less appetite. I think the important thing is to be sure you're eating enough of the right amounts of basic foods.
Mm-hmm. And second to last one, how important is organic?
It's important to the people who produce organic food more than to the people who consume it. By that, I mean the organic regulations control the amount of pesticides and herbicides and things we really don't want on our food. And it's been really good for farm workers because they don't inhale all those compounds that make them terribly ill. For consumers, organic, there is no real benefit in organic.
Okay.
Supporting organic foods because it's good for the way they're produced, or foods that are produced by what's called integrated pest management, which means that when you're growing for the masses, you use only the amount of pesticides that you need. Use them sparingly and as little as possible.
What advice can you give for seniors who want to lose weight?
It's tough. I mean, I have to start out with that. And it's for the reason I said you have more fat tissue and less lean tissue, and it's tough. All I can say is take an audit of everything you do and everything you eat. That by do, I mean your physical activity and what you eat. Take a hard look at it and try to cut back a little bit on the amount that you eat, and try to get in a regular amount of physical activity. And I would say for me personally, since I'm a senior, in case you didn't notice, I really like having the activity monitor on my cell phone, because it's motivation. And I know how many steps I've walked a day. And if I can get to my 10,000 steps a day, I feel really good about it. I can control my weight and I can pretty much eat what I want. And by that, I mean, not as much as I used to. Same food, maybe not as much as I used to.
And I told a fib. We actually have one more question,
Okay.
and then we'll end there. What about the behavior of eating, the benefits of eating slowly, small bites, listening to signals within our body, which indicate we have consumed enough food for the time being?
Those are, it's hard to knock those behaviors. Where you get the pleasure out of eating is while you're chewing, because that's where the taste part comes in. And so if you swallow your food, you're really not appreciating the experience of eating it. So taking small bites, not tidbits, but not pea-sized bites, but eating in reasonably paced amounts, eating slowly, and recognizing when you're full. Or it's hard to argue against those things.
Okay, well, sorry. For seniors that want to gain weight, then we will end there, I promise.
That is really a tough one. Here's my advice. It works, but you have to follow it. And that is to try to build small snacks between meals. Because at the end of the day, in that case, what you've got to do is to consume more calories than you have been. Not to exercise less, but to consume more calories. So if you can build in 2 snacks a day of things you haven't been used to doing regularly, you will gain weight, but you'll gain weight slowly. I mean, it's for people who have always had trouble maintaining their weight and are still underweight. It is a slow process. Just keep at it.
Thank you so much. So that was a super active Q&A session. I appreciate you taking the time to answer all our questions. So without further ado, I am going to toss it back to Mike to close out our program.
Thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Professor Goldberg, for that captivating presentation. Linda has a nice gift certificate to Sur la table, my French, table, that she will be sending to you on behalf of the Cape Cod Tufts Club. And to our attendees, we appreciate your participation, and we hope you will complete a brief 2-minute survey, which you will receive via email next week. These 3 virtual events we have held over the past several months have helped us raise over $2,100 for the Cape Cod Tufts Club's Scholarship Fund. If you're so inclined, we hope you will consider making a gift to this fund. Amanda will post that link now, so you can do so online. And she will also post another link to our new and improved website. Finally, I would like to invite everyone to join us again on April 10th for a virtual presentation on the significance of Cape Cod on the Plymouth colony, celebrating Plymouth's 400th anniversary. So watch for a registration email that will be sent to all of you soon. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and please stay well, stay safe, and eat healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.